When a doc makes the decision that they want to exit, generally they give themselves 2 years, and that's not enough time. Our sweet spot and the best opportunity for us to advise is the 7-year mark. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It's not based upon age. It's based upon the time frame that they're willing to invest and make changes within their practice so they're more efficient, more effective, and can maximize their value.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tao. I hope everybody's doing great. My guest is Brian Michaud from the Encompass Group LLC, and we're going to be basically talking about how to make an exit from your practice, how to exit from maximum value, how to start planning sooner than later. Brian has been in business owners since 1993. He's been working with business owners one-on-one since 2007. And they all have one thing in common. They are great at what they do when they aren't great at being business owners. He is the CEO of Encompass Group LLC and managing partner of Consult Encompass LLC. So please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, Brian Michaud. Brian, thank you so much for joining me today.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
So let's kind of tell everybody what you do. I think I said it pretty easily here, but why don't you, in a very short little, minute spiel, why don't you tell listeners and viewers of the podcast what you do for dental practice owners?
So I'll share with you, the 80-20 rule applies across all businesses. One thing that I found since I've been in business is 80% of everything it takes to run a practice or run a business. It's all uniform. It's all the same. It doesn't matter the industry. It could be a dental practice. It can be a landscaper. It could be a manufacturer. That's all the business aspect of things. The 20% is where their craft is and where their focus is. So the 20% is what they do on a regular basis that makes them money and generates them money. So what we do is we focus on the 80% so they can concentrate on the 20%. And if we get an opportunity to be able to work with a practice owner specifically, we can share with them the 80% stuff that they do not focus on, which is running their practice more efficiently and effectively, and then ultimately coming up with a plan for their exit point. Then they can have a successful off-ramp to, enjoying the fruits of their labor and building their practice.
Got it. And that's what it is. You're basically building something. There's a time in place where you're going to decide you want to exit, and that's what you help them do. You help them exit. And I'll use myself for an example. I had a practice that I purchased in 2007. I basically worked it for basically just shy of 14 years or just over 14 years. And I ended up selling it to my associate who joined me in August of 2020. And then I obviously retired in 2022 at the end of 2022. So there was a time and place for me to exit, and I took advantage of that opportunity. So that's what you're helping business owners with, is finding the best way to kind of exit their practice. So let's talk about something that probably still stings a little bit for me. I was offered, my practice was doing about $2.5 million in the years 10, 11, and 12. I was a very productive dentist when my focus was entirely dentistry. In 2013, that's when I got the entrepreneurial bug, and that's when my consulting and my review software and being sold to or selling it to Bird Eye all came into play. And my numbers started to drop. And then I brought an associate in, numbers started to drop even more. But in my heyday, what I say is in like 2012, basically, I was offered a significant exit from the practice, which I chose not to do because at that point, I was just turning 40 years old. And I said, I can't be an associate. I cannot not be an owner. And I chose not to. Well, fast forward to when I did exit the practice, which was, 10 years, 7, 8 years later, I took far less money to sell the practice. So, how do you know when to exit for maximum value? How do you start planning sooner than later? Like I said, I planned a while, then COVID hit, which screwed up my plans. But can you talk about that? How does someone know when the right time is? How do they know when they want to either sell to a DSO? How do they know if they want to sell to a private practice owner or to their associate, and continue working? Can you talk through all those there's a ton of scenarios here.
Yeah, there are a ton of scenarios. So, ultimately, this is what it comes down to. It comes down to the essentials of putting together a business plan and then knowing what your endpoint is. Business plans, as simplified as they are, just about every business owner, when you're told to go into business, put together a business plan and what it looks like. And my experience has been, you put together a business plan in the very beginning, and then you never look at it again. the business plan provides you with a roadmap to be able to get to the endpoint. So if you are all over the place and chasing after the best thing, what's making you the most money, and you're not keeping an eye on the endpoint, which is what everybody should be doing, you often lose sight of that, and you can lose your way and not maximize what you're doing. As far as, the best time to turn around and exit your practice, again, back to the business plan, back to some endpoints, making sure that you have, I call it the runway. You have a long enough runway to be able to ramp up and make changes within your practice, both from the financial perspective and the tax perspective and the traditional advice that you're going to receive, both from your business coach, your financial planner, and your tax advisor. So you can make those changes and then ultimately get out when you exit.
So how does someone know that I'm really trying to focus on how does someone know the time is right? How do they know it's time to exit? How do they maximize the value that they're getting is really what I want to find out here.
Okay. So the best time to turn around and exit is on their time. And I know that sounds counter intuitive to the question that you asked. But if they set an endpoint for 15 years, or if they set an endpoint for 5 years or 10 years, whatever their endpoint is, we go in and we can help them assess where their value propositions are or where their money-making aspects of their practice is. We can get them to focus on that and leverage those to maximize those. The endpoint is based upon them. It's not necessarily based upon where the revenue is and where they're maximizing the revenue at any given point in time. All of it comes into play, especially when it comes to transitioning out, if they're going to do it. Succession from within, I mean, you brought in an associate to turn on to take over for you or to merge with a competitor or sell out to private equity or however that goes. It takes the planning and the strategic moves within the business that's going to maximize the value that they're going to receive when they do finally ultimately pick a date to turn around and exit.
So let's say someone is 60 years old. We'll just use that as an example. Someone's 60 years old and they say somewhere between 65 and 68 years old, they want to say, I don't want to do dentistry anymore. How far in advance do they start planning ahead of time for an exit like that?
7 years. We have found that the sweet spot is, it's the 7-year mark. Our experience has shown when a doc makes the decision that they want to exit, generally they give themselves 2 years, and that's not enough time. That's absolutely not enough time. Our sweet spot and the best opportunity for us to advise is the 7-year mark. So 7 years before you want to retire, and it doesn't matter how old you are. It's not based upon age. It's based upon the time frame that they're willing to invest and make changes within their practice so they're more efficient, more effective, and can maximize their value.
So 7 years is the mark. And obviously, the closer you are to it, the less effective or less efficient you're going to be, basically. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement, yes.
Okay. So there are 4 ways to exit, and only one takes no planning. And I think I know which one is one of them, but can you talk about those 4 ways that you can exit your practice?
Okay. So the 4 ways to exit. The one that takes no planning, you pass away.
You die.
You just up and die. And it happens. And I worked with many families that have been in that situation, but you just pass away. The other ways to turn around and exit: succession from within. So whether it's from a family member, oftentimes as a child, especially within the world of dentistry, there's a lot of kids. There's a lot of succession. Mom and dad did it, so the kids are going to do it, and they follow in their footsteps. And or bring in an associate. So that's the succession from within part. Merging with a competitor, whether they're one town over or they're one block over, having a conversation and figure out how to come up with a value for their practice and be able to merge that in and then integrate the patients within the practice. That's the third way. The fourth way is, being bought up or being rolled into a private equity offer. And we do quite a bit utilizing private equity and working with private equity firms, and you get rolled up into this larger conglomerate, which gives you an exit ramp of roughly 2 to 3 years after that.
Got it. So let's talk about each of those specific things and why one would be better than the other. Obviously, if you're a succession plan, it's easy. dad's a dentist, kid's a dentist, the kid's going to take over the practice. I always wonder, I've been in many situations in my space that I talked to dentists and they said, well, my dad gave me the practice, or I'm purchasing the practice, or part of my income that I'd be earning is going towards sweat equity to purchase the practice. So there are a variety of different ways to do these, but can you touch base on each of those things and talk about, obviously there are some advantages. So obviously, let's take the succession out because that's an easy one. And dying is an easy one, but merging practices, being bought by an SEO, by a DSO, or even selling to your associate. There's a lot of different varieties here. So can you kind of give an idea of each of those examples?
I can. I will share with you this. Every time I have a client approach me that tells me that they want their child to take over their practice, I cringe. And the reason why I cringe is because that for the individual that started the practice, albeit that let's utilize the parent to child, the parent is not maximizing the value of their practice. There's no way they're going to go to their son or their daughter and tell them, great, you want to take over the business? The business is valued at $2 million. You're going to have to go write me a check for $2 million. I'm a father. I do a lot for my kids. I want to make sure my kids are set up. But, from the financial perspective, when you are a practice owner and you hand it off to your children, you're not doing it efficiently and or effectively because you're always from the parent mindset. So you're not going to maximize the amount of money that you're going to receive from your practice. So let's just start there. If you were going to do succession from within as far as an associate goes, those are generally held with the practice owner. I call it holding paper, but they're going to be financing the practice. The advantage to doing that, if you can give yourself a time frame of 3 to 5 years for that transition to take place, is you can phase yourself out. If you give yourself 5 years, you cut your workload back 20% every single year. You maintain your salary of what you're going to be maintaining, and then over the 5 years, by the time you finally exit, you're going to maintain your salary, be able to guide that associate to doing what they're supposed to be doing in order to grow the practice, which is going to grow the revenue, and then from there, split at the end of the year as far as profits go and profitability. That's a pretty decent way to do it. Takes some work, makes a lot of people pull their hair out of their head, but it's an absolute viable option. If it merge with a competitor, kind of risky. Reason why it's risky is because you have to sign NDAs and make sure that your competitor isn't going to steal your patients from you. You got to make sure that everybody is honest and open and nothing's being hidden. The issues that you're going to encounter with doing that is you're going to show your competitor everything that you're doing, and they're going to know everything. And if it doesn't come to fruition, if you can't get that agreement across the finish line, then they're going to be privy to everything that's going on within your world, within your practice. There's a lot of hand-holding that's involved with selling out to a competitor, and there's a lot of trust that's involved with that. But, it can be done. The advantage to a competitor, especially if they're one block or one town over, is it's still community. It's still part of the community. So, if you make the transition or you make the announcement to all your patients, hey, listen, I'm selling out at some point. I want to retire. Patients go to their doctors because they trust their doctors and they like them. They're going to appreciate the fact that you're finally going to retire. You're going to enjoy the rest of your life. But to turn around and make the transition over to one of your competitors, is pretty easy. But there are some minefields that you have to walk through, and you got to make sure that everybody is trustworthy and on the same page. Last one is selling out to a larger entity, a DSO or a private equity firm or something along those lines. Those, in my world, those are a lot of fun. Huge opportunity there. Absolutely huge opportunity. Very often, though, practice owners, they put an emotional number on their practice. That's their identity. That's what they started. That's what it's known for. So the number that they have in their head very often doesn't fit the financial metrics of what is going to be offered when a larger organization comes in and does an overview of what their practice is. Great opportunity there. Again, couple different ways to structure it. It could be a straight buyout. It can be a 3 to 5 year phase out where, they need to maintain that, maintain seeing their patients, but they're transitioning from being the end all be all as far as decision maker goes to then becoming an employee. For a lot of business owners, that's a tough transition because now you're answering to somebody. You're not calling the shots or providing the answers. But the opportunity there, it's fantastic. It's great.
So thank you for describing the different scenarios. So, when I first said I was going to put my practice up for sale, I had a number in mind that I wanted to get, which was unrealistic in my opinion after looking back at things. So I had an emotional number that I wanted to sell the practice for, but that was not the case. That was not a feasible number, which I think happens to a lot of people. You want a specific number, but you can't get it based on a variety of different factors. So can you talk about the difference between what I think is what my emotional number, and then there's the financial number?
Yeah. So again, the emotional number is all tied to, listen, this is me, right? Everybody knows me. This is my practice. This is what I built. I put everything on the line to turn around and get here. And I get it. I'm in the same boat. I've done the same thing with my firm and my organization with my 4 companies that I have. And I'm absolutely in the same boat. But the number, you're like everybody else. You're like every other practice owner. The number that I feel that my organization is worth is totally different and totally separate than when looked at from the financial metrics perspective. The private equity world, in the larger world, there's tens of thousands of practices. So you're just one of tens of thousands. But for me, I'm number one. It doesn't matter of the other tens of thousands. I care about me because I'm number one. So when we turn around in the financial metrics are most times, let's be honest, are lower than the emotional number. There's a way we have some proprietary organization and planning that we can do on the financial side of things where we can show individuals how they can spend the financial metric number that's offered for their practice, where it can spend just like their emotional number. So we can connect the two, and that's where our value is with our organization, with private equity firms that we do business with.
So where have you found, I know it's probably very regionally based or even by state, where have you found higher numbers for, a practice versus lower numbers? What states stand out to you that they're getting more value for their practice based on annual revenues versus some other states where they're getting less numbers?
So what I found is actually, if you were to cut the country in half sideways, northern, excluding the Midwest, but the Northeast, the Midwest, North, in the West Coast. That's where the values are.
Got it. And if you're selling a practice or looking to sell a practice, at what % of revenue? Look, if you're selling to DSO to looking at EBITDA, different story. They're not as concerned with that when you're selling to an associate or someone else. What type of value would they a percentage of annual revenue would you expect to get? Let's say it's over a 3-year period.
So over a 3-year period, you're probably looking at 1.5 to 3 is what you can expect.
Got it. Okay. So obviously you have a lot of people involved in a decision like this. When I decided I was ready to sell, I contacted my CPA. I contacted my attorney. I contacted my financial advisor. I didn't have a business coach on that side of things, but obviously we all sat down and we said, when are we able to do this? My situation was a little bit different. We had a 5-year plan, and when COVID hit, it became a 6-month plan.
Yeah.
But I reached out to them for advice, and that's how things happened. So obviously there's a lot of people at play here. There's a lot of factors at play. How do you change the mindset of what you've been told by these other advisors? And what do you expect how do you differ from what the other advisors say?
So this is where I mainly take issue with a practice owner's account. And this is the reason why. An accountant or a CPA or tax advisor, their number one job is to lower your tax liability that you're going to be on the hook for to the Internal Revenue Service on an annual basis. So they're all about deferring and deducting. But the problem with that is many of these practices they're either LLC practices or they're subchapter S. Everything flows down to the individual as far as profit and loss goes. It goes right down to the principal. The lower the AGI, adjusted gross income, the lower the AGI, the lower the profitability on paper that it shows on the practice. So I will very often counsel many business owners to, the last 3-year mark, because that's the window that everybody looks at. Pay taxes. I know it sucks. It's one of the most painful things to do. But tell your tax advisor, ease off on the deductions. let them show, let the world show that I had to write a big stupid check to the Internal Revenue Service. But what that's ultimately going to do, it's going to show that you are one hell of a profitable organization. They only go back 3 years. Generally, if you're merging, they're checking out financials for 3 years. So if you can show that you were stupidly profitable within the last 3 years of being in practice, let me tell you something. The size of the checks that you wrote to the Internal Revenue Service are going to pale in comparison to what your ultimate number is going to be when you finally do exit. So that's some of the changes that I tell people to take into consideration. It's going to suck. Don't contribute to your 401k or to your IRA. That's a different conversation for another day. Pay your taxes. Don't kick the can down the road, because I promise you, the checks that you're writing are going to pale in comparison to the additional values that you're going to get upon your initial exit.
Yeah, as you said, the accountant or doctors don't want to pay taxes. They want to show almost no profit. But if you show almost no profit when you try to sell the practice, that's going to hurt the practice sale. So it's kind of one of those catch-22s, which is why you have to have a plan in place over 7 years to gradually do that. I didn't do that. So of course, I didn't get as much money for my practice as I could have, because we didn't plan properly for that. That's where the planning goes into place. I mean, and that makes perfect sense to me. So let's talk about spending versus receiving. Obviously, what you can spend is more than what you can receive. It's more important than what you receive. So can you talk about the mindset there for people?
This is the financial aspect of things. I don't care how much you have. I care how much you can spend. That's the bottom line. It doesn't matter. So, if we're getting into, back to the tax stuff. So if your tax advisor is telling you to make contributions into your IRA, which I hope everybody's doing, investing in their practice as opposed to contributing towards individual retirement accounts, just because taxation on the backside is 50%. So I don't care how much you got. I care how much you can spend. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because if you have $1 million sitting in your qualified retirement account, which is your IRA for many business owners, safe rates for withdrawal will dictate 3.5%. So it's 35,000 taxable dollars out of $1 million. So it doesn't matter to me. We can show financial strategies for individuals where they can accumulate 1/3 to 1/2 less than what they have, and it's the spendable dollars that counts. They can spend exactly the same way. That's some of the other financial considerations that we take into consideration when we're working with individuals to turn around and exit their practice. Also, it's that's great what you got, but it's what's more important is what you can spend.
Got it. So let me ask you, we've covered a lot of information here. This is, very important information for people who are getting to the tail end of their career. Someone who's in their 20s may not necessarily want to hear this, but definitely if you're at the age that you're looking to potentially find something to transition out of, this was a really good conversation. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we did not cover yet?
We covered a lot, and I do appreciate the time. I urge everybody, pull out your business plan. I don't care if you've been in practice for 25 years, do another one. Pull out another one. And then, just as important as the business plan, do a succession plan. What does your exit look like? If reach out, resources, myself, whatever, but what do you want your exit to look like? Because once you have a plan in place and you put it down on paper, you can visually see it and it's actually in front of you. And you come to the end point, then you can start working backwards and make modifications and tweaks and changes for you to ultimately get to your end point. It's a lot of work. Again, 80-20 rule, right? 80% of businesses, they all do the same thing, what it takes in order for them to get the business up and running. But the business owners focus on the 20%. The 20% is your craft and what you do to make your money. We do the 80%.
Got it. So we're going to switch gears here. We're going to do a little Q&A. For those that are listening to the first episode, I do a little Q&A, 8 to 10 questions, very business-related things that we're going to ask Brian here. So Brian, first question, what is the number one tactic that you use to stay organized?
Google Sheets. I use a spreadsheet.
Okay. What book do you think you should go back and reread as it's had a great impact on you the first time, or what has been your favorite book?
The Challenger Sale has been my favorite book. It's incredible. It has changed my world and it's changed my clients' world.
Yep. Challenger Sale. Great book. Love that. Do you have a favorite business podcast?
Dr. Lynn Towle.
Raving Patients. Okay. We'll take that. What piece of advice would you give to college graduates who want to become entrepreneurs?
Do yourself a favor and you're graduating college with whatever your degree is, but do yourself a favor and get into learning some aspects of business.
Okay. How have you built a successful customer base?
Trust. They never lie. Always be honest. Set expectations up in the very beginning, what they can expect from you, what you can expect from them, and that garners trust, and that's it.
What mindsets have helped to make you successful?
Thinking big, thinking forward. Think forward 1 to 3 years, and think big. Do not limit yourself. What
is your greatest fear, and how do you manage it?
I think my greatest fear is passing away early. Honestly, I have goals and visions that I have for myself and my family. I think that's my greatest fear. How do I manage it? I wake up every day and, pray to God, thank you, and move on.
Thankful that you're there. Yep. 100% so. If you could be trained in any one thing by a top professional, what would you choose?
Motivational speaking, and I'd say Tony Robbins would be my coach there.
Okay. If you lost everything you had worked for tomorrow, what would be the first step in starting over?
A positive mindset. Been there, done it.
I think we all have at some point. So, what profession do you think is the most undervalued today? Tough question.
It is a very tough question. Undervalued.
Common answer is teachers. There's a lot of different.
I would have to go there. Yep.
Okay. Who would you love to collaborate with, and what would you love to collaborate on?
Collaborate with Glenn Beck. Believe it or not, Glenn Beck. And as far as collaborating on, I would love to collaborate with him on successful business strategies because the guy's amazing.
All right, 2 questions left. Which 3 adjectives describe your strengths?
Positivity, honesty, forward thinking.
Okay, last question. If there was one subscription you could not live without, which would it be? So what subscription, either business or personal, would you not be able to live without?
Right now, I would say Masters in Business.
Okay. So Brian, this was really good information. Tell me how people can reach out to you. I know you want to offer them something. So how can they find more information about you? How do they reach out to you? And then what would you like to offer the listening and viewing audience?
So if you want to reach out to me, I'm going to give you my cell phone. And that comes directly to me. If you don't reach me, leave me a voicemail, 860-930-5330. I would encourage everybody to check out my website because there is a ton of information on there. A lot of what we discussed today, and that's Encompass, ENCOMPASS group.com. And again, there's so much within my website that we have put in there, and it covers a lot about what we discussed today. And this is what I'm willing to offer. There's no obligation, and again, everybody needs this information. So, reach out to me if you want to learn, you want to put together a plan and see what it takes to put together a plan to exit. Reach out to me. I'll give you 20 minutes, half hour. We can have a virtual meeting, virtual conversation. It's all about you. It's got nothing to do with me. And if you find value and you want to partner up and we can work together, fantastic. But, come learn.
Got it. Well, Brian, this was great information. Thank you much for enlightening the audience. I hope they learned something about it. Guys, if you like the episode, please share it. Please tell your colleagues. If you know a colleague who may be looking to exit their practice and they want to do it a little bit more efficiently, let them know about the podcast. Give them Brian's information so he can reach out. He's offering some of his, let's say you'll let them pick your brain for a while, et cetera, et cetera. So, please remember, guys, I have an event in September 27th and 28th. It's called Supercharge Your Dental Practice. It's in Scottsdale, Arizona. We have 13 amazing speakers talking about business and marketing, leadership, and financials, part of the practice. So if you want to learn how to take your practice to the next level, you can go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com and use the code RAVING for an additional discount. Last year, we had 218 people. We're looking to get it even bigger. It's at the Scott Resort and Spa in Scottsdale, Arizona. So I hope to see you there. Brian, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to thank the sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the Doc Search, for their support. And as always, I end these podcasts. Remember, your reputation matters. Until the next episode, Brian, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Thank you.